I'm a little smarter than I even know myself sometimes. When I was watching Alvin Bragg and that presser, and at one point he says something to the effect of, a reporter asked him, what is the underlying crime here? What is the underlying crime? The indictment, not the statement of fact, although the statement of fact, as far as I know, really doesn't specify the underlying crime either. The potentially AI-generated indictment, which is 34 counts, that goes in February, invoice, check, entry, voucher. In March, invoice, check, entry, voucher. In February, March, April, underlying crimes. It doesn't mention what the underlying crime was. When Alvin Bragg gets up on the press podium thingy thing and says,
the indictment doesn't specify that because the law does not so require.
Was for fraudulent payment to conceal another crime. What other crime?
The evidence will show that he did so to cover up crimes relating to the 2016 election.
So a journalist asked him at the end of that presser, in one of the 4 questions that the courageous, confident man who looks like he stepped knee deep into a world of he's like, the indictment did not specify it because by law, it does not need to specify it. And I'm telling you, like at its roots level, Western law is based in logic and a deep sense of justice. I say Western law not to distinguish it from other law. I don't know the legal systems of other countries all that well. Western European law, you have like basic things that are recognized as fundamental rights: the right to face your accuser, the right to know what the hell you are accused of. Alvin Bragg comes out and says,
the indictment doesn't specify that because the law does not so require.
The indictment, it's not required by law, so we didn't specify the underlying crime. Well, first of all, far be it from me to contradict what the district attorney would say is the state of the law in a jurisdiction that I don't have any expertise in, but a little flag went off in my head. That sounds a little curious to me. It sounds curious. It sounds curious that it's the case. And even if it is the case, by whatever fluke that you don't actually have to specify the crime that you're alleging in the indictment, it seems kind of unfair where, you know, when you're indicting a president for the first time ever, maybe you want to go a little more, to pull out the French expression, trop fort casse pas, go a little too strong because too strong doesn't break. Even if you don't have to specify what the underlying crime is, maybe just do it. So people don't think you're nothing but a corrupt, Soros-funded, progressive district attorney who's hell-bent on seeking political retribution against your ideological adversary. Maybe just do it for that reason alone. But lo and behold, it seems that he might have violated Trump's Sixth Amendment rights. This article came out today. If anyone doubts that I actually put the tweet, I put the tweet out in real time. It's like, oh, I got questions. I'm just a Canadian schnook lawyer, but we didn't specify the underlying crime because the law does not so require. It's from Fox News, so take it with a grain of salt. Bragg violated Trump's Sixth Amendment rights in refusing to disclose underlying crime. Legal expert. I'm not a legal expert, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn. The Sixth Amendment guarantees the defendant will be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation. Who is the expert attorney? I want to know. Jonathan Turley or Dershowitz? His Sixth Amendment rights may have been violated when Alvin Bragg refused to disclose the underlying crime the defendant intended to conceal through his alleged falsification of business records, legal experts opined Wednesday. The Sixth Amendment provides in part for the right of the criminal defendant to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor. When questioned by a reporter as to the underlying crime the indictment fails to name Bragg replied he does not have to. The indictment does not specify because the law does not so require, he told journalists. Bullshizer. On Hannity, who is it? Greg Jarrett. I know Greg Jarrett. I like him. He's smart. Forcefully dismissed Bragg's claim, saying he likely violated Trump's right to know what he is specifically being accused of. He does have to name it via the Sixth Amendment, Jarrett said. The indictment is therefore facially defective. It is deficient on its face and would be susceptible to a motion to dismiss. Everybody's given Trump like legal advice indirectly through social media. Jarrett questioned whether Bragg slept through constitutional law in his studies at Harvard, envisioning the prosecutor working late one evening in New York City, mumbling that, I've got to get Trump, what crime, and that an office worker simply remarked, don't say anything. That's funny. Jarrett recalled a warning from the Supreme Court Justice Jackson, a Nuremberg trial prosecutor, who said the greatest danger to justice is an unscrupulous prosecutor who targets a person and then scours the law books to find an offense he can pin on that person. That sounds very much like the communist adage. That's what Alvin Bragg did. Washington Times Editor Charlie Hurt later added incredulously that Bragg's charges amount to potentially more prison time, 136 years, than infamous Ponzi scheme Bernie Madoff, who died. The circus, it's absurd, it's ridiculous. Alvin Bragg embarrassed himself, embarrassed the legal profession, and we all agree on that. Don't need to read the rest. So yeah, there is nonetheless at the core of justice, at the core of law, typically a sense of justice. And if you feel that something is unjust and just fundamentally violates your perception of justice, it's probably wrong and problematic. Alvin Bragg is he's screwed up. He's screwed up so badly. I'm not giving John Walsh any more airtime on Twitter, but he screwed up so badly that even the Never Trumpers and even the left-wing media are like, this is bad, this is weak, this is only going to help Trump, which to me is very much a problematic perspective, because it does necessarily imply that they would not mind the injustice so long as they were assured it would in fact hurt Trump. An injustice that everyone's going to see as the injustice that's going to help Trump, that's bad. An injustice that's going to hurt Trump, that's good. And by the way, I'm also cynically predicting that all of the early outrage as to how weak this indictment is and how facially, superficially untenable it is, it's going to fall by the wayside. And the same media that originally said how weak, defective, thin it is at the beginning, in a year from now, they're going to be on the other side of it saying he needs to get convicted of this. And they will not be able to be called liars, because they're going to say, look, whatever happens after that, if it gets dismissed and whatever, they're going to say, well, look, we said it was weak, back then. And if he gets convicted, they're going to say that they'll be happy. So the media will change its tune after doing their obligation of getting on record their observation that this indictment is a load of horse pooey. And when people forget about that, when people forget about what the actual indictment said, they're going to start going a little stronger on he needs to be convicted. Nobody's above the law.
Earlier this afternoon, Donald Trump was arraigned on a New York Supreme Court indictment on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. Under New York state law, it is a felony to falsify business records with intent to defraud and an intent to conceal another crime. These are felony crimes in New York State, and it was a false statement that the defendant made month after month in 2017. The evidence will show that he did so to cover up crimes relating to the 2016 election. As part of this scheme, Donald Trump and others made 3 payments to people who claimed to have negative information about Mr. Trump. The scheme violated New York election law, which makes it a crime to conspire to promote a candidacy by unlawful means. The $130,000 wire payment exceeded the federal campaign contribution cap. In order to complete the scheme, they planned to mischaracterize the repayments to Mr. Cohen as income to the New York State tax authorities. True and accurate business records are important everywhere, to be sure. That is why we have a history in the Manhattan DA's office of vigorously enforcing white-collar crime. No amount of money and no amount of power changes that enduring American principle. The indictment doesn't specify that because the law does not so require. Thanks so much.